join our other moderators today in thanking the three chambers for putting this together today. There is nothing more important than regional cooperation and statewide cooperation in today's busy times in order to be able to get much more done. As Kathy said, my name is Charlotte Weber, and I do have the privilege today of serving as your moderator of this very important panel. A panel that I believe, and I believe our panelists agree, spans across every other panel that you have heard and will hear today: aerospace, healthcare, energy, and technology. In the essence of time, what I'm going to do is jump ahead, and how we're going to do things maybe just a little bit different. I'm going to introduce all these four panelists seated here today, ask them to deliver some opening remarks detailing a little bit about who they are, what their institutions bring to North Central West Virginia, and simultaneously talk about the role of education and how it impacts economic development. And then what we're going to do is open it up a little bit to some questions and answers from you, the audience. So while they're speaking, I ask you to be thinking about the important role that education and these institutions, these very important institutions, play in North Central West Virginia, and how they impact your business, your community, and your lives. Our first panelist, Dr. Doreen Larson, is president of Pierpont Community and Technical College. As president, Dr. Larson focuses on regional partnerships, outreach to veterans, increased graduation rates, and workforce training. She has launched many new programs at Pierpont, including petroleum technology, Landman, LPN, advanced manufacturing, drilling and mine safety, airframe structure, and electrical utility technology. Dr. Larson also has a rather large project underway right here behind me that I think she might bring into her discussion today. I asked Dr. Larson what drove her to a career in education. And Dr. Larson replied, accessibility. Dr. Larson was driven to a career in education to help make higher education accessible to people with disabilities. Dr. Larson began her career in education as a high school teacher for students with disabilities, and then pursued other degrees to help students with disabilities succeed in college. Accessibility to Dr. Larson is the basis of the creation of community colleges. And Dr. Larson has served the community college system very well as a faculty member, as a dean, as a vice president, and now as a president of a community college in the state of West Virginia. Let's all welcome Dr. Larson.
Thank you very much, and I thought it was very, very telling of Charlotte to reach out to each one of the panelists to ask a question about, again, our personal career path in education, because as many of you may note, this is the first panel that has the majority of women on the panel today, and so I think it is instructive to see what drove us to become leaders in our careers and leaders in education. And so she mentioned that it was, for me, the possibility for people with disabilities, and then really expanding that possibility to all people to have access to higher education, because it is the key to quality of life. We know that here, but there are populations that do not know that. What drove me to West Virginia is it is the state, I think, in the most need of higher education and accessibility to higher education. We saw some of those statistics this morning that we still have the lowest percentage of our population having college degrees in all of the 50 states. And so if there's ever a need for community colleges and accessibility, it is here in West Virginia. As far as what community colleges do, and I'll start with a little history of community colleges in the state of West Virginia. We are new. Community colleges were created within the state of West Virginia around 2006. Pierpont was created in about 2008. So in the history of community colleges, which generally goes back 50, 60 years, we are a new entity and a new concept in the state of West Virginia. And we have grown exponentially, all of the community colleges in the state of West Virginia, because we fulfill a very specific need and a very specific niche within the state. What community colleges do and do best is respond quickly to economic need. We are designed for agility. We are designed to be quick on our feet and to do those quick responses that are needed within the economy, and then bolster pathways into four-year institutions, into masters, into university research. But we are that pathway when an opportunity comes up, especially in a new and emerging technology or economy. We are the pathway to get the workforce on the ground quickly. No better example than the petroleum technology programs and the petroleum technology emerging industry in the state of West Virginia, something that came about really within the past 5 to 8 years, and something that at Pierpont we are grateful for the industry partnerships that we have had. And we could not have launched our program without partnerships with industries and reaching out to those. But we were able to really stand up many levels of workforce for petroleum technology, from the extraction to the research. We do the land management programs, and we are now moving into midstream. And I speak about this as if I really understand all of that. And Charlotte gave the introduction and said, that I had launched all these programs at Pierpont. Pierpont has launched all these programs. I've been the person that's, maybe found some funding and organization for those. But it is really the spectrum of expertise that we have at Pierpont that has launched these programs, including the petroleum technology. Where we fall within the next few years for the state of West Virginia is, again, that agility and that quick response. And no one can really predict what's going to happen in the economy and technology. We're all sitting here kind of, we can see some general directions, but again, 5 years ago, who would have known that we could, effectively extract natural gas from Marcellus Shale? And now we look at Utica and those types of things. But again, where we fall is that ability, as those needs and emerging technologies come forward, please talk to us about what those workforce needs are, because we can respond with that. We don't give you a package, you give us the needs, and we will do the curriculum. Where I think really the next steps come for all of the colleges up here, and particularly for Pierpont, and it's been alluded to throughout the morning, is reaching down into the middle school levels, reaching down into the K through 12 system, and getting us to really get students interested at an early level into these areas of STEM education. I know they will talk about that. Finally, in closing, I will talk about the Advanced Technology Center, because again, I think if there's ever a physical structure that would speak to the mission of community colleges, it is that technology center. It is flexible. It is within an industrial park. It sits within all of these partners here. And if you ever want to, again, just have something in your mind, an icon of community colleges, think of that technology center, someplace right off the freeway, going to run 24/7, and its total design is to respond to the needs of the community and allied health and power and energy. So thank you again. Everyone in here has supported Pierpont in our growth, and on behalf of Pierpont, I thank you very much for that support.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Dr. Joyce McConnell. Dr. McConnell has been the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at WVU for 8 months. But prior to becoming Provost, she served as the Dean of the West Virginia Diversity College of Law for 6 years, where she expanded the law school's clinical programs to provide education to students and certain citizens of West Virginia while simultaneously promoting economic development. As Provost, Dr. McConnell continues to seek that balance between the university's community and the region's economic prosperity. Asking Dr. McConnell what drove her to a career in education, Dr. McConnell replied, "Other than the basic human needs, nothing matters more than education." Her belief in the power of education to transform individuals and communities compelled her to make a career in higher education. Please welcome Dr. Joyce McConnell, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs for West Virginia University.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. It's wonderful to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation. The original invitation was actually extended to the President, to President Gee, and he's very sorry he can't be here with all of you today. He's very, very committed to what we are trying to do regionally and statewide for economic development, so I want to make sure that you all know how much he regrets not being here with you today. But as the Vice President of the university, I'm delighted to be here today. I have been in West Virginia for 19 years. I've spent my entire career in higher education, graduating with my LLM from Georgetown in 1986, which is a long time ago now. And I started teaching in 1987. I came to West Virginia in 1995 as a member of the faculty, became an associate dean, then dean, served for 6 years, and as Charlotte said, I've been the vice president since July, so 8 months. I never knew that I would have a career in higher education, so I can't say that my path here was purposeful. What I can say is that I was fortunate enough to get here very quickly and early in my career. As I said to Charlotte when she asked me what is it that drove me to spend a career in education, I said what I actually truly believe, which is in the lives of people, and particularly West Virginians, other than basic needs, and I include in that things like love and faith and food and shelter and health. There's nothing more important to the individual, to the family, to the community, or to the state than education. And I think it is wonderful to hear from Dr. Lawson the role that community colleges are playing throughout the state in being that first entry point for many people into higher ed. I was asked to talk both about WVU and about what I think higher education contributes to economic prosperity, and I'm going to talk about it in that order. The first thing that I think it's important for me to tell you about WVU is that even though we can't shoot very well, we beat Maryland by 10 points. We're hoping they shoot better on Thursday night against Kentucky. But I start out with talking about athletics because often people associate the largest university in the state and the state's land grant with athletics. Think more about our athletics teams than they do about what we do in terms of provision of both education and service. Because of the land grant mission of West Virginia University, we take very seriously that we actually have a tripartite mission. We have a mission to educate our students. We have a mission to provide research that extends beyond, that meets the needs of West Virginians, but extends beyond West Virginia's borders, whether that has to do with petroleum engineering or has to do with neurosciences, or poetry, for that matter. And we also then have a responsibility to the state to provide service throughout the state. So many people do not know the reach of West Virginia University throughout West Virginia. So for example, we have 478 extension agents or extension faculty in every county in West Virginia, providing programs that you may not even associate with WVU. For example, 4-H. There are more than 50,000 students enrolled in 4-H. All of them are trained and supervised by people from WVU. In addition, we have farms around the state, we do research around the state, we provide health care around the state, and so this gets me to my basic 4 categories of what does West Virginia University do and how does it relate to economic prosperity. The first one is you tend to think of Morgantown as West Virginia University, right? The town is the university is the town. What have we done for Morgantown and what have we done for the region? Well, first of all, you can see we increased the population. Most people complain about that because they complain about the traffic. I actually celebrate it. It means we add about 40,000 people total, if you include all positions at the university, to the population of the region, which is not insignificant. 40,000 people with all of their spending power coming into this region makes a huge difference. We also build, and as you know, and I'll quote the president here, he refers to cranes on campus as the university bird. We do a lot of building to keep up with the university's needs and the state's needs, particularly state needs for research. And so we infuse a lot of money into the local economy, and that really does stretch throughout the state, but particularly from Morgantown to Bridgeport. We also provide incredible services for people who move to the region. And I don't have to say much more than to talk about the health care that's provided in Morgantown, which is truly extraordinary, and I've been blessed to have been able to take advantage of living so close. But if you combine that, the increase in population, the stimulus that it provides to the local economy, and the kinds of services it provides, whether it's health care or culture, you can see that a university like West Virginia University does much more for economic prosperity than simply to educate its students. But perhaps nothing is more important than what we do as education. That's the sole mission. That's what drives us. We educate both undergraduate students and graduate students up through the PhD level. We educate physicians, pharmacists, dentists, nurses, engineers, lawyers. I can go on and on about the professions, but you can see that our educational mission is both deep and broad and meets the needs of the state of West Virginia and the nation, and for our global presence actually meets the needs of the world. So that's number 2. Number 3 is research. This is an area that's often misunderstood, but West Virginia University actually does have a research mission as part of its tripartite mission. It means that it attracts tremendous amount of external funding, which then feeds back into the economic region. So it is not unusual for West Virginia University to have somewhere between $140 million and $200 million worth of externally funded research going on at any time. And so this fits extremely well with what's going on at the community level, particularly in emerging industries, because while you're preparing ready workforce to hit the ground running, we are preparing students. We can take those students, we can migrate them into the university. They can graduate with a 4-year degree or a master's degree, and at the same time, we can be doing advanced research that they're also engaged in. So very few people know this, but the National Energy Technology Lab, which is a federal lab of the Department of Energy, is located in Morgantown. For many, many years, West Virginia University has collaborated with the National Energy Technology Lab. It was originally at the lab that horizontal hydraulic fracturing was refined and developed. It gives you a sense of the incredible impact that research that we collaborate with or do on our own has on the world. Or, for example, all of the new stroke medicines that are coming out, the ones that can be administered within 40 minutes to make a difference in someone's response to stroke. That's being developed actually at WVU. There are many other things on the health sciences side and research that are going on there. And that leads me to my fourth. So the first was the people and the buildings and the services. My second was education. Third is research. But fourth is the translation of that research into the region and into the state and beyond. So, for example, as part of our mission at the university, we've been taking our research in entrepreneurship. What is it that makes it possible for people to have an idea, to grow that idea quickly, and to become more prosperous? We have a launch lab that helps small businesses around the state. That launch lab's a one-stop shop for patent protection, intellectual property protection, business planning, strategic planning, financing. There's a materials lab. In addition, we do tech transfer. We provide business support. All of these efforts are going on in Morgantown, but also infused through everything we do throughout the state to make sure that West Virginia University is really fulfilling its three tripartite mission, and particularly service to the state in terms of playing a critical role in increasing the education and prosperity of the state. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Dr. Maria Rose. Dr. Rose was named Fairmont State University's 14th president in April of 2012. However, being named president, Dr. Rose served Fairmont State for more than 20 years, teaching developmental writing, reading, and study skills, preparing campus-wide tutoring programs, and serving the institution as Director of Retention and Vice President for Academic Affairs. Dr. Rose started as a grade school teacher in a two-room schoolhouse in Ida May, West Virginia. Asking Dr. Rose what drove her to a career in education, Dr. Rose replied, "I always loved school and knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a teacher. My career has evolved from an elementary school teacher in that two-room schoolhouse in Ida May, West Virginia, to higher education, and now to my present position." Please welcome Dr. Maria Rose, President of Fairmont State University.
Thank you, Charlotte. Sitting here this morning, I kept thinking how fortunate those of us in education are to be able to interact with all of the other agencies here in this area. We're truly fortunate to be able to do that. Fairmont State University is celebrating its sesquicentennial this year. And we started off as a state normal school all the way back in 1865, and now have evolved into a university with more than 80 baccalaureate programs, associate's degrees in nursing and technology, and master's degrees in business, criminal justice, education, and most recently in architecture. Unlike the community college, we're certainly not as nimble on our feet because it has taken us more than 5 years to get this Master's in Architecture program up and running with all of the specialized accreditations and all the approval processes that we have had to get going. But it's well worth the effort. We're certainly a regional institution. And that's why a forum like this is so important to our university, because our largest population of students comes from Marion County, but second largest population comes from Harrison County, and third largest population comes from Monongalia County. And it just so happens that those are our three chambers that are represented here today. We certainly have a huge mission within the state of West Virginia because, unlike WVU, most of our students come from within the state. And even though we have an out-of-state student population and that is growing, we feel like our primary mission is to educate West Virginians. Charlotte mentioned earlier that the college going rate and the college attainment level in West Virginia is pretty low. And when we look at that, we're really astounded. Within Marion County, of those students who have just graduated from high school, the college going rate is just a little over 50%, not quite 51%. In Harrison County, it's a little bit better, 63%. In Monongalia County, it's a lot better, 67.7%. But then you look at McDowell County, down in southern West Virginia, and their college going rate is only 25%. So that certainly speaks to the value of having colleges and universities within a community. And we take that part of our mission very seriously. Our mission statement says that we want individuals to be able to realize their personal and professional goals and be able to become responsible citizens. Now, that's a big order. And we also feel like that part of our mission is not just to address those traditional age college students, but help those individuals who started college and stopped out, to be able to complete their degrees, or to work with business and industries in the area and help their employees with degree completion or degree advancements as well. So as far as Fairmont State, we feel like that we have to educate our traditional age students. We have a commitment to our non-traditional students. I told you we started as a state teachers college, and we certainly continue that part of our mission. So we have a responsibility to train our teachers so we can get into those grade school, middle schools, junior high schools, so that those students can be well prepared when they come to college. Even more than that, we are a huge economic driver in the community. Recently, Dr. Amy Godfrey from our School of Business did an economic impact study of what Fairmont State University meant to our region. As a result of expenditures, Fairmont State faculty, staff, and students spend over $400.5 million in our communities. And this generated over $62 million in salaries and wages for individuals. Fairmont State University receives a little over $16 million in state appropriations. And if you factor all of that out, then for every dollar that is spent by the state, we get the community gets a return of more than $25. So it's a huge economic driver to the state and certainly to this region. We take our mission very seriously. Unlike WVU, we're a Division II school. We're no longer in the playoffs, but that's okay because I was getting a little tired of basketball games. And in a heartbeat, I would cancel some of our sports. Start off with football. I would cancel football because I could balance my budget in a minute if I didn't have football. But football, Fairmont State University has such a strong athletic tradition that too is important to the community. So we cannot do that. In addition to that, that provides a lot of opportunities for our Division II student athletes who might not otherwise come to college and certainly don't have the skill level to go to a Division I school. So we realize that our mission is as a regional institution. We feel like that we have embraced that mission. We are not trying to be someone that we are not. We are trying to serve the population of West Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Dr. McClellan, Craig McClellan, is Dean of the School of Education and Associate Provost at Salem International University. Dr. McClellan came to Salem in 2009, where he has gained national recognition of educator preparation programs and earned national accreditation for the School of Education. Linking education and development, the topic of Dr. McClellan's dissertation research focus was on first-generation college students, their families, and the West Virginia Promise Scholarship Program. I thought that was very interesting.
It's very interesting.
It is very interesting, and I thought it would be very interesting to read those research findings. Asking Dr. McClellan what drove him to a career in education, Dr. McClellan replied, "He is from an education family. His father was a 38-year teacher and coach and principal. His mother, an elementary school secretary, and his brother is currently a principal in Roanoke, Virginia." Dr. McClellan began his career in much the same way, earning degrees while teaching and coaching. But he didn't tell me what he coached.
Wrestling and baseball. Wrestling and baseball.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was during his doctoral study at George Washington University, a very fine institution, we share that he began to organize his thoughts on education and empower his passion for education. Please welcome Dr. Craig McClellan, Dean of Education and Associate Provost at Salem International University.
Thank you for that very nice introduction, and what an honor it is to sit here with these three outstanding educational leaders that serve the state so well. I'm also from West Virginia. I'm from the Southern Coalfields in Logan, and I think that what has empowered me, my passion, has come from the fact that my perspective is a bit different, perhaps, than many of you in here, and that my father had to take his young family out of Logan for opportunities that took us to Virginia. And then my story is one that took me about 35 years to find my way home. So this really does mean a great deal to me, and I like to think about this story. At one time at the DMV, I met a senior citizen. She was just sitting next to me randomly, and she was reading the newspaper. And she just really didn't even look from the paper and just passed the comment. She said, "You know, our people here in this state shouldn't be so poor. West Virginia coal built this state. We should be like Texas and Oklahoma." And I think about that a lot because with all the opportunities that we have, especially in this region of the state right now, we have opportunities to do it so much differently and a lot better this time. So I think that those opportunities between education and between the economy and really our democratic society in general, what a great time to bring those three factors, kind of visit the ideas of Thomas Jefferson and John Dewey again on how these three sectors of American life are so connected. As coming from Salem, my institution is, of course, a bit different than the three that are also represented here on this panel. We're a proprietary institution with very deep West Virginia roots that date back into the late 1800s. But yet we're this proprietary thing that most people are still trying to figure out what's that about. But by our very mission, a proprietary institution must have programs that lead directly to career paths. So our institution has to be committed and focused on programs that are supported by data that will lead to profitable or sustainable career paths where our graduates can sustain themselves and can add something to our workforce. So by our very nature, we fit well within the topic of this conversation. I will also say my perspective is a bit different in that I'm from a small institution, a small private institution. And we're fighting a whole new set of challenges. And I know that our larger public school brothers and sisters are fighting those same challenges that are coming with increased transparency and accountability for the work that we're doing. But for us, it's kind of a time for survival. You've got to find your niche. You've got to do your niche well, just to survive. So our take is, again, a bit different. So this is an excellent topic. So I'm really interested to learn things as well as participate in the conversation. So thank you very much for having me. And I did want to say to Dr. McConnell that I live in the Evansdale section of Morgantown, and the traffic doesn't bother me at all, so keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. Now, right before we I will start this off. And I want you all, I hope you've been thinking about questions here. We have a lot of questions for these panelists. One thing that I want to think back to is this previous panel on aerospace, where we had the business community sitting here. And we listened to, quite frankly, a lot about workforce development. And we talked about it from the business perspective. And now we have educators here. Quite frankly, a group of terrific educators who work in workforce development and education every day. If that is giving any hints out here for questions, and maybe to those same business people that were up here on this panel, about linkages and how we can connect together, because quite frankly, there's nothing more important than education and economic development, and bringing those two together to create jobs and careers for people, not only here in North Central West Virginia, but across this great state of West Virginia. So from that perspective, panelists, and I guess, unfortunately, you're the closest to me, Dr. Larson, we can go ahead and start with you. So from an individual perspective, what is the most important way education will impact economic development here in North Central West Virginia? From your institution's individual perspective. Some of the programs maybe that you're working on.
Sure. Well, you heard from several of the companies that were here today, again, how we've been reactive to the needs as they have come about within the various industries focusing on aerospace and then some of the other areas, certainly the areas here within the high-tech park with biometrics and those other areas that go along with software development. For us, the next level, I guess, is what we're asking for Pierpont Community and Technical College is to be in a proactive mode, is to actually help with attracting new businesses and new development within our region. And in our region is 13 counties. We start with Mon County, we extend down to Braxton County, and to give a context of that, our service region is the size of the state of Connecticut. So it is a vast service region which gives us challenges, but enormous opportunity to draw on all the various sectors. It is, I think, a unique location in West Virginia, this location where we are in North Central, because there are various segments of the economy throughout the state. There's mining in certain areas, there's manufacturing in other areas, but there's a confluence of those industries here. We are really in the center of just about anything that is happening, again, among the state. So for Pierpont Community and Technical College, our role and where we see our role in the next steps for the economy is really to be in a proactive mode, to attract businesses, to use our resources, which aren't necessarily dollars, but facilities and expertise. You know, we've made some small steps for the revitalization of Fairmont, the city of Fairmont. We bring energy where we go. We bring students and faculty, and so we bring those resources to various areas just by our presence. But for us, it's trying to, again, be in that proactive mode to get sectors together, even the oil and gas sector, even the biometrics sector. We can convene those areas, see where those needs are, and then continue these partnerships so that we bring all those resources together. So that's really our next step, is to really look at what emerging technologies and businesses that there are and do our part to assure them that they can land here in West Virginia, and there's going to be a workforce, there's going to be facilities for them. So that's our role.
Dr. McConnell?
Well, I agree with everything that Dr. Lawson said. I do think that we do tend to be reactive, and then because educational systems take a while to develop programs and get them approved all the way up through the Higher Education Policy Commission and accrediting agencies, We have to work really fast if we're reactive, and we're much better positioned if we're proactive, which I agree means not only building partnerships, maintaining partnerships, but it means seeking partnerships. And that's a way that we can really make a difference economically, is that the institutions can reach out beyond the borders to interest business in what we have to offer in the state and in this region. There are some hot areas that we are really making a difference in focusing on at WVU, and I thought I would highlight some of them because some of them build on what Dr. Lawson is doing at the community college level. And some people might look at that and say, well, aren't you in competition with one another? The answer is absolutely not, because we're attacking this problem at different levels from different perspectives and work incredibly well as a team. We are absolutely delighted at WVU and are working across the state to develop articulation agreements with community colleges so that their students can have a seamless transfer into what's going on at WVU. So they can stay close to home if they want to, get the benefit of an excellent education at a community college, and then transfer in to get that upper level bachelor's or master's or even PhD. Some of the areas that are really hot here are very similar to what you've heard. There is petroleum engineering, particularly natural gas, still a lot of demand in mining. Biometrics is a huge research activity and educational activity at WVU, particularly because of the FBI. And we have a very long-standing relationship with the FBI, and interestingly, the FBI's presence has made a big difference in terms of business growth. You can really track the development of a lot of high-tech businesses in this region directly to the FBI's presence. Forensic sciences is another one, and our program at WVU in investigative sciences is recognized really now as the top degree, bachelor's, master's, PhD degree granting program in the world. And that's not a statement of exaggeration. I just met with the accreditors, and that's exactly what they told me. In addition, we're doing incredible groundbreaking work in neurosciences. That's attracting a lot of businesses as well. Our research work in cancer, and our research work in children, particularly in pediatric cardiology, are really expanding the growth of biomedical businesses in the area. And this gets back to advanced materials, right, and advanced manufacturing. A lot of that is happening in the biomedical field. Those are just some examples. One that you may not think about is one that I've been working with Rocco Fusillo on, and Patrick Kirby, who's also here, and that is community development. And West Virginia University has really expanded, again, broadly and deeply throughout the state in community development, because we recognize it's not enough to build prosperity here. We want to reach out across the state and help communities that might not otherwise have the expertise. So those communities are reaching out to us. We have brownfields efforts, dilapidated buildings, landscape design. There's a community and sustainable development law clinic that works all over the state with communities to develop master plans so that they can begin to get a grip on what to do in terms of managing their communities. So community development is another area where you may not think of it as being tied to prosperity, but what we know is if you get into a community, you help a community plan, that community becomes a better community. It is a better magnet for business, and this is something that we need to be doing throughout the state. I'd be happy to answer any other questions on it, but that's a quick overview.
We at Fairmont State University have been trying to anticipate some change that's needed by reaching out to specific business and industry and asking them what we can do to help them. For example, our School of Business started an IBM initiative a couple years ago because the IBM folks came to our School of Business and said, no longer are colleges and universities graduating people who have the skills to be able to use the IBM technology. Well, I told you how slowly we moved, but still our School of Business was able then to redevelop their curriculum in order to meet the needs of the IBM folks. And I'm not just talking about IBM companies, but I'm talking about financial institutions on Wall Street that use the IBM technology, the income tax division, and all of those. In addition to that, we have reached out to business and industry to see if we can encourage employees within those industries to complete a degree. And the state has the RBA Today program, which not only gives credit for college credit, but college work, but also for life experience. And that has enabled a lot of individuals to be able to complete their degrees and thus increase the degree production in West Virginia. In addition to that, we try to do a lot of theory into practical application. And I'd like to cite a couple examples of that. We have a national security and intelligence program. And as a part of that, we have an open source intelligence exchange lab. And that exchange lab works to provide actionable intelligence to our intelligence community. They are not just doing simulations, they are doing real-time work. They work with the National Guard, they work with the West Virginia Fusion Center, they work with the CIA, they work with other agencies and provide real intelligence to those individual agents. And it's often even better because our students are young and, if you will, think outside the box, and our intelligence community was trained in a specific way. So often this is very beneficial to the intelligence community as well as to our students, giving them good practical experiences. We've developed a lot of simulation labs throughout the campus. Our nursing simulation lab was our first, and that has provided wonderful experiences to our students, so they're ready to go out once they join the workforce and actually are able to feel comfortable in doing their job. Most recently, and this is appropriate given the most recent legislative session, we added a shooting range simulation lab. And that's very important for our criminal justice students, but it's also important for our police officers on campus as well as for other officers in the community. So we're trying to focus a lot on theory to practical application.
We're also focused on the same type of theory to application. I think, I hope most of us are doing those kinds of things. I think in our School of Business, again, our biggest goal for our work has been to reconnect the institution to the state. So many of you may have met our Dean of Business, Dr. Mark Getty. So he's really working hard to try to be responsive to the needs and really how can we capitalize and prepare the workforce that's needed, especially for the oil and gas industry. The message that we're getting is they're not seeing the workers in West Virginia that they need to fill their jobs. So how can we prepare those people? How can we give them those skill sets? And I think that's the basic goal of all education, whether it be at the K-12 level or in higher education. I will also say that our community outreach at Salem has probably been a big focus for us, especially during our president, Dan Millant, who was also invited to attend this panel and could not, but he would speak about this very passionately, about wellness initiatives that the university has sponsored within the town of Salem. We have other community outreach opportunities because the western end of Harrison County, when we create a program at Salem, we work real hard to think how can this improve the conditions for the people who live in the western end of Harrison County, we don't really have a lot of the services and opportunities that, say, our brothers in Bridgeport or Clarksburg might have, or the folks in Fairmont and certainly in Morgantown. So we're really the cultural hub of that western part of Harrison County and Doddridge County. So we take that mission, we take that with a lot of sincerity, a lot of passion. We want to do things that improve the quality of life to the people of that part of the county. So we believe community outreach is a very important goal at our institution as well.
Okay, we have time for a couple questions from the floor. Let's open it up to the floor for questions.
Yes, I appreciate each and every one of these up here today to talk about education, some of the things you're doing. But one thing I think that the schools and higher education are missing, one of the things that I think the schools and higher education is missing is finances with our youngsters today. With the youngsters coming out with $100,000, it is nothing to see in the financial arena, people being $100,000 in debt, trying to get a start, making them payments. Secondly, the misuse of credit cards that's out there, it gets them in trouble with the credit scores. When they get ready to buy homes, it's costing them thousands of dollars extra to get them homes. And lastly, once an individual gets ready to retire, the overwhelming majority do not have enough money to survive. So I think that that's something that all education is lacking out there. And you can't expect financial institutions to resolve that situation because you have all the children all the time. So I'd like to hear their comments pertaining to that and what their thoughts of correcting that problem.
I would love to respond to that. One of the things we do know is that our student indebtedness in West Virginia is actually significantly less than in other states, which I think is important to point out. The average indebtedness of an undergraduate student from WVU is about $27,000. You do read all the time, and there are anecdotal cases where people have huge debt, and there's no question about it. But I think it's important to understand that we've done a really good job in West Virginia of trying to keep debt down. WVU has had an effort on financial literacy for quite a long time. Our students actually have to go through financial literacy planning when they take their loans. And we are actually instituting something even one step beyond that. We have something now called Project 168, which is a personal and professional development program, which includes much greater focus not only on financial literacy and the loans they're taking out and whether they can repay them, but about planning for their careers overall, over a long term, and what they need to do to be able to pay for it, and what career they're choosing and what that career will pay for. So, for example, if you want to be able to buy Louis Vuitton bags, you probably want to choose one career, and if you don't care about Louis Vuitton bags, you may want to choose a different career. So we're really working hard on that at WVU, and we do have a lot of programs in place.
I would say the same thing for our institution. In fact, a number of years ago, we recognized students were getting in trouble with credit cards, and it was a common practice during those times for credit card companies to set up booths whenever we had activities. We no longer allow those credit card companies to come onto campus to entice students. In addition to that, our students graduate again, as with the WVU students, with an average of less than $20,000 in student loans. We have been conscientious to try to keep our tuition and fees low compared to the other institutions in the state. At Fairmont State, we rank third from the bottom in all of the state institutions. So we've made a conscientious effort to try to keep those costs down because, again, we know we're serving the students of West Virginia.
That was from a private school, just real quick. I think that we have to focus on accessibility and affordability from small institutions. The reporting requirements to the federal government they seem to grow every year, geometric proportions. They want to know, show us that your program matters. And I really believe that Title IV funding, I think most of us would believe that it's not going to be just a blanket, yes, you get Title IV funding. I think we have to make the case that our institutions are worthy of student loan dollars. So I think you're going to see small privates become very aggressive, and I think it's going to change the structure of small private institutions because, to make things more affordable and accessible to potential students, which means we have to get leaner and meaner ourselves. So I think there are things that are going to just, our own president has launched, you may have seen it's a zero or manageable debt initiative at Salem. So I think those things are about to grow, pretty phenomenally here in the next decade, probably sooner.
This is a pretty softball question for a community college, since we do begin with the lowest cost of higher education. So from the get-go, students enter into a community college having a lower bill overall. Then when you consider that they're only spending 2 years in higher education rather than 4, 5, or 6, there's a huge savings there. Our students right now exiting in several of our programs, you heard about some of those today, where they graduate on Friday, they go to work on Monday, they're earning $40,000, $50,000 out of the box in those jobs. Our petroleum technology graduates are going into jobs earning $80,000 after a 2-year degree. So when you're just looking at it from a pure financial aspect, we start out at a low cost, and our students enter into very, very good high-paying jobs, especially in the state of West Virginia, with the ability to then go forward into 4-year programs debt-free, and they can pay as they go to school there. So it is really should be the first stop for just about everybody in the state of West Virginia.
Well, I'm getting the ticker that we're running over time. No more questions? One more question. She's giving me one more question. You have the microphone. I'm sorry.
First of all, one thing that I wanted to mention, some years ago I was a participant in Leadership West Virginia, and there was this statistic that I was not aware of. I'm sure it's a little old data at this time, but it was a data that we could be proud of, that at that time, the state of West Virginia was in the top 10 in the country of dollars spent on students. So when we sit here and we think about the students that are not going on to college and whatnot, we have been committed citizens to our students within the state. But having said that, as the budgets continue to shrink and our state institutions are provided with less dollars for the product that they deliver to our students, and with the emphasis on the graduation and completion rate in the institutions, how are you all trying to tackle that with the shrinking budgets that you have?
I'll take that, because as I've been known, I'm going to steal one of Dr. Gee's one of his sayings, and I think it's just germane to the question. It's partner or perish. Mm-hmm. We can no longer exist as separate institutions, and even from the K through 12 system, but certainly within higher education, we cannot just be a community college that survives on its own, 4-year school. We really do have to get our act together to work together and make sure that we are partnering all across the board to use those limited resources and to make our case, again, as was mentioned this morning, to make a unified case at the legislative level, not just sort of a piecemeal request as separate institutions, but really coalesce and be a very powerful voice to start to turn that tide for investment. And that's what it's going to take. We're going to have to become unified and really become a very powerful lobby in Charleston to turn around that investment in higher education.
I'll say that the state appropriation cuts, all the budget cuts, have been both a blessing and a curse, certainly a curse. But it's certainly been a blessing because it's forced us to look at the way we do everything and, if you will, trim away the fat and find the most effective and efficient ways of doing everything. And I think we have all been required, I know the state agencies have all been required to do that because we have suffered a number of cuts throughout the past few years. In addition to that, speaking about degree completion, we have gone from a typical average of 128 hours to finish a program of study on the baccalaureate level down to 120 hours. And I think we have done that without compromising the quality of our programs. But it has forced us to look very carefully at our programs and figure out how we can best deliver the curriculum. In addition to that, in order to encourage students to complete in a more timely manner, the Higher Education Policy Commission has initiated a 15 to Finish initiative. And that means try to get students to take at least 15 credit hours per semester. And I think for a while students were lulled into the idea that they only had to have 12 hours of credit a semester because that's what made them eligible for financial aid. But I think all of these initiatives have helped make us a more streamlined machine, if you will, and helped us address those issues.
Well, I had one thing I wanted to offer to the group, and that's actually a challenge, which I think that everyone in this room can actually be a partner in higher education. And as you heard, partnering is the most important thing we can be doing right now. What we'd love you to do is begin to talk about the significance of higher education to West Virginia's prosperity. One of the battles that we're having is that people no longer necessarily understand that there's a connection both between individual prosperity, state prosperity, and national prosperity, and it's linked to higher education. So all of you can be supporters for higher education and make a difference in this state. So I offer that as my challenge.
And the only thing I would add is that the accountability for those things that you said, they've never been higher on higher ed. I can speak specifically to education. When the NAEP scores came out several years ago and we were ranked, I think, 50th, the West Virginia State Board of Education is very committed to improving the achievement of our students in the public schools. And they're looking at this comprehensively. And they're looking at higher ed. And they're looking at educator preparation programs. And they're wanting to see results supported by data, that things are improving. And I think most institutions are realizing we need to embrace this. And I know my institution has. So the accountability has never been higher. So I think that, yes, money's being cut. But you know what? I think the fire's been turned up at the same time on producing results. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Well, I feel some fire here behind me. I thank you all. I thank this panel. Please accept this challenge and accept the challenge also for K through 12 because there is nothing more important than education and education in West Virginia. So I thank this great panelists, all these panelists, and I thank you all for being here today. Thank you very much.